Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world to share their insights and expertise so we can all grow together. I am your host, Heidi Schalk, and the co-founder of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we help businesses drive revenue by being seen as the authority and go-to expert in their industry versus just another product and service. And today we are talking with an amazing guy, gentleman, with a fun company. I can't wait to dive into this. Nick Honegger with Geekdom. So welcome, Nick, to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Let's go on. Thanks for the invite. Super excited to be here.
I am excited to chat with you. So can you share with us, Nick, and kick us off with telling us a little bit about you, like who you are, what you do? I know you have a lot of hats that you
Yeah,
have, and your role within the company.
no, absolutely. So I am the Senior Director of Revenue over at Geekdom. I'm also the Director of Development over at Content on Call. So what those companies are is Geekdom is kind of half incubator, half co-working space. So think of us as the community where you can go to work, but also learn how to grow and scale your company. And Content on Call is a nonprofit that's kind of based off the Tom Shoe model, except it's a digital marketing agency. So we create anchor content for nonprofits that are looking to raise funds and do that by offsetting the cost from paid clients. So how I got in these two kind of kooky spots is I have a pretty long history working in the B2B SaaS space. So I used to work for a venture equity fund here in San Antonio, got through an exit with them under my belt, and then went back to work at another VC firm to be a GM of an acquisition and led them through a merger. And finally got to do some cool community-centered work. So now I'm at Geekdom helping San Antonio kind of grow one entrepreneur at a time while also doing some good for the nonprofit world.
Nice. Yeah, you're a busy guy. So
Keeps it fun.
yeah, you definitely stay busy and going. So Nick, what are some of the biggest challenges you work with, like you said, startups? So what are some of the biggest challenges the early stage startups face, and how does Geekdom help them overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, I think of it's a lot of kind of this is going to sound silly, but it's kind of that intimidation to start. I think a lot of folks will come in and say, "Oh, like where do I go? What do I focus on?" Or Geekdom, our sweet spot is from, "Hey, I watched Shark Tank one day and thought this was really cool," to, "Hey, I need like a seed funding, like a 25 to $50,000 check," and a lot of that initial thought process is, where do I even begin? Like, are there people that are doing entrepreneurship that are as crazy as me? So our biggest role in that is just providing that community, and that I don't want to say like safety net, but those mentors, those peers, where you can ask those questions that you honestly just. I don't want to say you feel stupid, but you got to be vulnerable, right? You're like, hey, this is my thing. I'm really nervous. Like, how do I go get customers? So I think getting through those initial, like, really tough questions is hard for a lot of people because if you don't talk about your idea, you can't improve your idea. So our biggest goal is to get you in and get you through a lot of kind of, I would say, rigorous programming just to battle test your idea. So when you do open it up to the world, you've gone through a lot of the initial like market testing and just getting customer feedback.
That's really cool because when you're many entrepreneurs don't get that opportunity, or they don't even know that that opportunity exists. They're just kind of like testing it in the open market. And I love that you can do it in-house, where by the time they go out into the, I guess, quote unquote, public market, they've already been tested, they've already been asked the questions, they've already, gone through all of those vulnerability stages. And that's a big piece and hard part for many entrepreneurs is asking those questions, getting vulnerable, showing the fear that they have, right? Because many times we show up like, okay, I got this, or this is their baby, right? Too.
Yeah.
So it's close to the heart. And yeah.
No,
So go ahead.
it's funny you say that because I think one of the biggest challenges people go through when they initially go through some of our programming, I like to call it, you have to be able to call your baby ugly in a sense, which is tough, right? It's like you've been working on this thing and you come to us like, hey, I've got the next $1 million idea. I just need help building the website, or I just need help doing X, Y, Z. And then we look at it and we're like, well, you actually need help doing some other stuff. Like, have you actually told anyone about this, or, tried this pricing model? And I think being open to feedback can be really tough, but it's a way to get these founders actually ready to be successful. Is this ability to take in feedback for them to be able to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to be told their baby's ugly, and our business is our baby. I know I'm very protective of my business, so I know how it is. So you mentioned community. So how important is community and collaboration to in the startup journey, and what role do you all play in fostering that?
Yeah, a super selfishly motivated answer here because we are such a huge community in San Antonio. But statistics back me up on this one. Is community is a huge part of success, and this goes back to even if you're just working a more regular 9 to 5, or regardless of what you're up to, having those community connections helps you a lot just emotionally and like kind of guides you along your journey. It's tenfold when it comes to startups and entrepreneurship. A lot of folks, there are high highs in entrepreneurship. There are some really low lows. And I think we get the same kind of the same fog that you get for folks that like want to go like be in the NBA. All you see is the flashy contracts, the cool stuff, the people winning $2 million on Shark Tank. You see that and you're like, wow, that I can go do. Like, what a great life. What you don't see is like the 15-hour days, the like not hitting sales, the going to an event that you blew all your budget on where you make nothing. I think there's some really hard lows in this space. And that's not to say that suddenly it becomes much easier, but it does become way easier when you can have those experiences with a community where there's people to fall back on. I think that the coolest thing I've seen in our community is twofold. You either say, "Oh, like I learned this crazy lesson from another member. Thank God I don't have to go learn that myself, right? Like I kind of learn from this shared failure, because then it kind of turns it into a positive." The other crazy thing we've seen is a lot of folks don't come in with this $1 million idea, right? They come in, they think entrepreneurship is interesting. They're going to do some of our programs that are designed to just get you thinking about problem identification. And some of the coolest stories we have are folks that came in wanting to do one thing, but met someone at Geekdom and ended up doing another, and that was their business. Like their business came out of this community. So I think it's amazing what you can do when you have peers that are just interested in saying, "Hey, I want to work hard. I want to be an entrepreneur. I just need to find my team." And that's a lot of times what they'll really leverage us for is that team dynamic.
Yeah, you said something and I had it and I was like, oh, that was the community for me is key. And that's one thing I tout all the time because like, and you said the importance of it and like having somebody to fall back on, having something to fall back on, having a group of people. And the thing that I love about community, which was scary for me, I'm a recovering lone wolfer. So when I started my business, I was a lone wolfer. I was scared to be vulnerable and ask questions and also be seen, right? In entrepreneurship, you got to get out there, you got to share what you're doing, and you got to ask questions, and you got to ask questions of other entrepreneurs for their feedback and possibly mentors. And also, you've got to ask questions of your target market to really understand what they're looking for. But having community of like-minded individuals is like it's not replaceable because because we may not have in our own world those people that fully understand what we're doing, and it's not that they're not supportive, they're just don't fully understand it and can't comprehend it. So having a community of like-minded individuals is an absolute must in my opinion in part of the success journey. So let's talk about that. What are some key factors that determine whether a startup will succeed or fail in its early years?
Well, I think one, I'll start with the story because I think this kind of goes, it kind of reinforces community too. It really is team.
Mm.
Um, and I say this because I know I won't name blast them, but there's a few VCs I've worked with in the past that have loved teams so much with like, where like they've literally said, "Hey, your idea is not going to work. Like, we are not going to give you $250,000 because this will fail by the time you have to go to round A. Like, and here's why. Boom, 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 boom." Which talk about a rough meeting, right? Like, hey, instead of giving you money, we're going to tell you your idea is terrible. But we love your team so much. We think you can pivot. We'll still give you the money if you can think of something new in 6 months. And we'll fund that journey. Which to me, it was just like I used to guest lecture at Trinity. I'd always use this as a hey, like if you're willing to put in the work and like that's the story you want to hold on to. It's like the team matters a lot. Like there are so many people that come in that will say like, "Hey, I need you to sign like 5 NDAs." No, if whoever thinks of this as the next bajillionaire, like I guarantee you someone's already pitched it to me. Like there's so many people that put so much pressure on the idea itself. Like most ideas are not unique. Um, there are some exceptions. Like there's some going to be some scientist out there who has a very specific patent who's like laughing at me right now. With most of the time though, like
They're
the
going to
other
come
95% of
challenge you,
the
Nick.
yes,
They're
right.
coming
Like
for you. They're
for
coming.
that, it's a little different, but honestly, it is the team dynamic. Are you flexible? Are you coachable? Like all of those, I don't want to say basic metrics, but that will determine success way more often than the idea itself. Like if you are willing to go learn from customers, if you're willing to get an MVP and just go test it, the ability to just go do stuff out in the open is what makes you successful. Because if you sit in like if you're just gonna go sit in your room and like craft this thing and you're convinced that if you just make it perfect, by the time you go to market, it'll just be perfect. There's no way you can just guess what the market wants. You have to test it. And that all comes back from like team flexibility and coachability.
Yeah. And chances are, if you're trying to get it perfect, somebody else is gonna, if you don't execute the idea is gonna come to someone else, right?
Yeah, like
Um,
and they'll just from trying stuff.
right, right. And whoever gets there faster is gonna get it out faster. Um, so what advice would you have for founders looking to scale their businesses without losing sight of their core mission?
Yeah. I think it's I'm gonna say this, it depends a little on what your mission is, but I think most of the time you get into entrepreneurship because you want to solve a problem.
Mhm.
I think that should be kind of your core mission, right? So, because a lot of founders get a little scared and like, man, I have to change what this looks like. I have to change how I talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's still solving your, hey, this is what I thought was broken. This is what I want to solve. Then that kind of keeps you going in the right direction, right? So if you're like, hey, I wanted to solve whatever, like better housing. So I wanted to like create cheaper materials. You can go into manufacturing and do all sorts of stuff that kind of goes within that bubble of your mission. So don't get too attached to the specifics of how you get your missions done. One of the tools we throw out all the time for this is the lean canvas or business model canvas. I think there's a couple now that kind of came out of the Stanford Design School. But the goal is, hey, can you get your business on like a one sheet summary paper? Where it's like, what's your key value prop? Who are you selling to? And just go test that out and get feedback, and that will get you closer to solving your mission way faster than getting like so pigeonholed into one concept. Like, just be able to be broad and don't change it just because you feel like it. Change it because of customer feedback. I think that's really where this gets. I don't want to say muddled, but I think folks get really attached to their mission and then go one of two ways. They say, hey, we can't do any changes because this is what our mission is. So this is what the product has to be. Or they're so desperate to make the first sale, they kind of change what they're doing just to get to that one customer. And you can definitely do both. But the trick is to take it like one piece of feedback at a time. Like I think it's be slow to change, be methodical, but don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it'd be a little flexible, have flexibility in mind. And again, that comes with your market research. You've got to understand what your target market is looking for. And I work with my clients all the time, and I'm like, you've got to talk to them about what they're saying in their own minds. If you're saying certain language and that's not language they're using, there's going to be a disconnect there. And even though it solves their problem, and you could have the best product or service out there to solve the problem, there it's not going to resonate with them because there's a complete disconnect. So completely love what you're saying there. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that I think you might, okay, let's talk about funding. What are some of the
Yeah.
biggest mistakes that founders make when seeking funding, and how can they better position themselves for an investment?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one I see all the time is it's funny too. This is again, I'll shout out Shark Tank because that show drives me crazy because they cut out, fun fact, they cut out like 3 hours of negotiations in between to like make that TV show. Is they'll see that and they'll go ask for like $500,000 with no financials as to why they're worth that, which sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, oh, by the time you get in front of investors, you should know like how to make the ask. And so many people drop the ball on that where it's like, why do you need X amount of dollars? And if you don't know the why for like every single dollar you're asking for, don't ask for that much money. Like you have to be able to justify it. You have to say, here's my growth plan. Here's what I'm spending it on. Here's how much goes to marketing. Here's how much goes to salaries. Here's how much goes to acquisitions. Like so many people go in without any sort of knowledge of what it would even do for their P&L. And that's a disaster for
Yeah.
two reasons. One, you look really bad in the moment, just transparently. Like the investors would be like, this, you just look really inexperienced. Two, no one's gonna like I've seen 0% success rate if you don't know where it's going. So step number one, know where like why you're asking for that amount of money. And then two, focus on growth with your ask, right? So some folks are like, hey, I can't wait to get a whole bunch of money to like pad my salary because I want this Silicon Valley lifestyle. Like those days are long gone. Like no one's gonna give you a six-figure salary to go like investigate. Like most founders pay themselves like 30 to 35K, which is not a lot for the first 6 months, but it's enough to get you to market traction. So I think it's knowing what a realistic budget looks like when you're framing that out will help you just do 10 times better than anyone that does That doesn't. I know that sounds like a super simple answer, but you would be shocked at how many founders initially are just like, "Oh, we need 250K for X percent because I thought so." And it's like, well, that's not that's not don't change that immediately.
Yeah.
And just like look at how much you can make, do true forecasting. That will save you so much time and headache in the future.
Yeah, and understanding the valuation. Like again,
Yeah.
this is their baby. I think that's one part of the problem that many founders, inventors, people that are really close to their product or service have is that they're not the analytical people behind it. They're not in tune with the numbers as much. They're really attached to their baby. And you need to know what Nick's telling you right now is you need to know your numbers and you need to know the projections. You need to know, what that looks like for the people that are investing. Because at the end of the day, that's all they care about. They care about the bottom line and the numbers, right?
Yeah, this I always feel evil being the numbers guy, but I think it's all about ROI, right? I think the best way to approach be it venture capital or angel or whatever you're doing to raise money, is know like, hey, if someone's going to give you a check for 50 to 150K or whatever, they have alternatives, right? They can go put it in real estate, they can go put it in stocks, they can go put it in a high yield savings account for all they want and get 4%, right? And sit on it, right? They're investing in you because they think there's a pathway to hit a huge ROI. So project that in your projections and tell them that story because if you can't convince them of that, they have 10 other options that are safer bets against you, right?
Yeah.
So I think knowing that narrative is so critical.
Yeah, and that goes back to your messaging on whether you're putting together a product or service for a specific audience or you're looking to get funding. If you want funding, then you need to know your target market. And your target market that you're trying to get it from is your investor and what is their goal? What are the results that they want? And that's what you got to talk into. So yeah, so good, Nick. So how can bootstrap startups compete with venture-backed companies in today's competitive market?
No, man, it's definitely tech, which is what I we'll probably dive into this more, but I think it's there's kind of two ways you go about this, and you've seen this with a lot of like sub industries that popped up. Like the CRM world is a really good example of this. Like Salesforce for the longest time was like the de facto winner for any sort of CRM management. HubSpot is now kind of started to fight them against that a little bit. But for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, essentially, if you want to manage your customers, there's two great tools that let you do that. The reason now that industry has exploded, and the reason what I would suggest for folks to do is like, hey, how do I compete against these huge firms? Is you kind of really niche down and you find a small subsection of customers that really have a pain point with the current solutions, right? So, what I wouldn't recommend, which I've seen folks do, is just say, hey, we'll just beat them on pricing. Or, hey, well, because like you can't, you're not going to beat someone who's got $100 million in the bank on pricing because they can just make it free for longer than you can be solvent. And then like they can just put their prices back, right? But what you can do is find an issue with their product or service that a big enough group of people have a problem, right? They're like, oh man, this would be so much better for teachers if it did XYZ, or this would be so much better for this subsection of their customers if it did XYZ, and go master that, right? There's a lot of there's a great book that I think it's I want to say it's finding your category or finding your niche, but that thematically is how you beat these bigger companies. Is you say, hey, is there a big enough pain point with this customer base that could be its own industry? And then you go all in. And odds are, if you're starting that company anyway, you probably have felt that pain point, right? You're like, hey, this sucks for me. I wonder if there's enough of me's out there to make this a business.
So if you have heard and you're starting a business or you're growing a business and you've heard, you need to niche down and you've been one that's been pushing it off and you're not where you want to be, you heard it from here. Again, Nick says you got a niche. So find your niche, grab the book. And so Nick, let's talk about tech. Let's go there. So
Yeah.
how is technology, particularly AI and automation, changing the way startups are building and scaling their businesses?
I think speed number one because you can use generative AI in particular with like the chat GPs of the world. There's a bunch of different language learning models now, so I'll use the generic GPT one because that's what we use a lot at Geekdom too. It has just made things so much faster and accessible, which is great because then you can compete on specifically like content output because there's so much more you could do just from a raw content piece. You can even get sneaky stuff, and this is like half tip, half great idea if you're starting a business. If you're like, hey, where do I start? Or like, I want feedback on my idea. You can copy paste like the Simon Sinek Start with Why methodology, the Lean Canvas methodology, the Business Model Canvas methodology, and whatever other great books that you love, like Hero's Journey is another one. They've got little PDFs that give examples of those startup tool methodologies. Put
Mm.
them all into ChatGPT and say, hey, here's my startup pitch. Give me feedback and frameworks for all six of these methodologies. And it will spit it out for you. I have literally sat down with clients that I consult for and just and showed them this and said, hey, great idea. Let's get all the frameworks knocked out of the way. That used to cost like 10 grand per framework to go find like a specialist. And is it as good? Like, probably not, right? But is it like 70%, 60% as good? I mean, kind of. And it just gives you access to stuff you would never been able to do as a startup.
Mm.
And it gives you feedback on different like mindsets to go try. So I think from like the early brainstorming phases, it's phenomenal. I think where it starts to kind of teeter off is don't think it is as creative as a real person, right? Don't let it replace your email strategy. Don't let it replace your growth strategy or sales strategy. Use it to start. Like it'll get 80% of the way because there's just best practices that aren't going to change, right? The funnel mindset never going away, right? You should always have like, how do I get awareness? How do I get
Right.
marketers in, right? How do I convert them to sales? Great. The AI is great at that because it's a tried and true methodology. Where you need to still be a founder is say, hey, how do I be creative? How do I apply this to my audience? Like, don't let it do all the work for you because you can tell, right? There's already trends now where you see posts that are like emoji heavy or like use certain words that aren't really conversational. You're like, oh, this is just AI. That's how they got it. So if you can tell it's AI, it's probably not good. But if you use that to get your base layer, you can still operate way faster. But please, please, for the sake of my sanity, edit it before you start blasting stuff out because I promise you, you could tell, and other marketers can tell too.
Very true. So don't drive Nick crazy with your posts. Take out some emojis and clean it up a little. No, you want to add your personality and bring
Yeah.
some of you into it. That's the key. But AI is a great tool for efficiency, productivity, gathering ideas, gathering data to support you to make it there quicker. But again, make it yours and create your own. So I agree. You can tell when it's AI and when it's not. My daughter was making a resume, building her resume out yesterday, and she's like, what's it? How do I do a cover letter? And I'm like, mush. I'm like, I call her mushy, boo.
Copy
I'm like,
paste it.
yeah, I'm like, boo, I haven't made a cover letter in I don't know how many years. I'm like, Google what the format is and I'll help you write it. And she's like, and I'm like, are you ready? And she's like, oh, I ran it through ChatGPT. I'm like, please make it your own because they know, they
Edit it
know.
though. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great starter. It's a great starter by all means, but edit it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, but she's 16, and it's important that these kids are utilizing these tools because it's the way the world is. So, the schools don't want them to use it, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be ready for the workforce and for where they're going if they're not already utilizing it, knowing what prompts and what it's good for and things like that. So yeah, so thank you for that. So I have a question for you, Nick. For our listeners listening who are like, you know what, I might want to talk to Nick. Who do you work with? Do you have specific types of businesses you work with? Like, who are the people that should be reaching out to you? And then,
Yeah, I mean, just for transparently, my background is 90% either software as a service, so the SaaS world. So if you're a software marketer or salesperson, I've done a lot of team stuff with that. The other half of my life has all been in the nonprofit space. So
Hmm.
I'm still an active advisory board member for Venture Lab, which is entrepreneurship education for K to 12. I'll volunteer teach at some universities locally in San Antonio, and then obviously my nonprofit that just does marketing for other nonprofits. So that's my sweet spot. But if you're just looking for, hey, I need generic, like how to get started advice, I've seen a million and one startups pitched to me. I've mentored for, I guess, I'm getting up there probably 10 plus years now locally in San Antonio for startups that are just kind of figuring out their story. So I would say if you're like, hey, if you're super deep into something that's software related, I'm super helpful. If you're just getting started and you're like, hey man, how do I just tell stories? I'm probably a good fit for that too.
Amazing. So wherever you are, basically,
If you need
reach out to
storytelling
him.
stuff, I'm
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
he'll tell you. He'll send you the right person if it's not him, but
Yeah.
definitely reach out to him. So Nick, I'd like to pivot a little bit on into the marketing space and the growth
Mhm.
of the company. So what are some challenges for our start company people that are listening that are maybe starting up and going, oh my gosh, I'm having some challenges. What are some challenges that you all faced in your growth and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll put it in two boxes. So Geekdom is really interesting because we have essentially two products, right? So we are co-working, which is a physical thing. You have to be there. You either need co-working space or you don't. But our sweet spot and what we're actually kind of SMEs in is entrepreneurship education, right? We're teaching people how to get startups launched. We're investing in startups. We have our own fund that kind of does that as well. So as a marketer, that becomes very difficult for storytelling because, you've got one homepage. You've got, how many landing pages do you have to spin up that just tell the co-working story? How many tell the like programmatic story? What does that do for your social strategy? What do you show off? Which was super challenging for us. A lot of other like multi-product companies go through the same issue. So one thing that we've done that I would recommend is figure out what resonates with both audiences that also kind of promotes the culture of your brand. So for us, community, obviously we're rooted in if we have a lot of people in a space, guess what? They're either co-working or growing their company. So all of our, if you look at our social channels and what we promote, it's events, it's our members. We have a core value called make our members famous that uh, I think I'm almost been a Geekdom for 2 years, and that was probably the biggest thing I leaned into is like, hey, the way we scale this org is we go all in on make our members famous because we're super fortunate in our product it's not super fun to talk about, right? Like it is as much as you would love to see a bunch of rooms to be like co-work here, that doesn't really like make you excited. What does make you excited is, oh man, like we just got a single mom who is an educator, 50 grand to go start her dream company and it's scaling at Geekdom. Like that's cool. That's the why. That's impactful. Let's put her on Instagram and tell her story because it is two things. One, it makes us look so cool because like we're there, we care a lot about those stories. And then two, by telling their stories, they get more traction because people notice them through our channels, which are bigger, and then they grow, and then their store becomes bigger, right? So I think obviously not everyone can have that exact kind of mindset, but I think the biggest thing you can do now to help kind of scale and go back to is like figure out what stories resonate with your audiences and find creative ways to tell those, right? So ours happen to be very like feel good stories that are exciting, like that's kind of aspirational, right? Typical entrepreneur demographic. But there's a million other examples. Like I was trying Duolingo, that's like a very silly like B2C uh, or like business to consumer group that does crazy stuff on Instagram all the time because that's what their audience loves, right? So it doesn't have to be always inspirational. It can be funny. It can be unique. It can be serious. But the trick is test it because you have to know what your audience resonates with and then go in that direction. That helped us a ton.
Yeah, and I think testing is constant, right? We're
Yeah.
always constantly testing everything we're doing. Um, so my next question for you, Nick, is when it comes to you said you like to make your members famous. So let's talk about that, marketing, like visibility, getting seen. So what are the ways that have worked for you all as far as marketing? How do people find you? What are the strategies that you use that are helping you get out there and be seen by your target market?
Yeah. So my big theory on this, and this is, I'll tell you kind of Nick's hot take on this one, is do stuff that gets you noticed. And sometimes that's not always in a good way. Like one of my favorite conferences ever, and this was at a different company, but my goal was to get us kicked out of the conference. Like we got like a big inflatable character and like wore a bunch of our branded t-shirts and we would just walk around to like all the live streamed events and like sit and watch the shows and this like goofy character. But my God, did we have a huge line in our booth because they're like, what is happening? Like, what is it? And then they asked us to stop doing it. So like that to me is a win, right? Because it creates a conversation around what you're up to. So we did this at Geekdom as well, like one of my favorite campaigns we've ever done. Uh, and this kind of goes into like the actual answer to this is how do you tell the coolest thing with the budget you have? So we had a very tiny budget for this huge event we do. So instead of spending it on ads, we said, hey, let's give away half of it. So we're going to go give away $1,000 a day just in San Antonio, and people can come find us. In the best elevator pitch, we'll give them $1,000 to go start their company, and we're just going to go hide in San Antonio. We're going to tell all the news where we're going and just post a ton of videos. And we broke every social record Geekdom's had on the planet since
Oh,
it
that's so cool.
existed through this like pitch it to win it campaign. But the way we thought of that was like, hey, what's the best ROI we could get with this amount of money? And it's like, wow, man, if we think like what would go well is if we tried this weird thing that we've seen work in other like cities, like what if we just tried that here? Um, Granted, at the same time, sometimes you try and take those risks and it does not pay off. So you have to like kind of evaluate what you want to go for. Um, but I think not being able afraid to stand out. There's a phenomenal book all about this that I'm sure I stole all these ideas from called like Be the Purple Cow or some variant of Purple Cow. One of my favorite marketing books ever. but it's all about how do you look at like being different and then leverage that through your storytelling. And if you're different enough, it's an interesting story. Because if you
Yes.
just copy what the big firms are doing, no one's going to be excited by you because they're just, you're not going to outbeat the big firm at what they're the best at. So think of a new way to be creative, to be fun. And if you're yourself, typically people will relate to that. They're like, oh, this is exciting. They're trying this new thing and they want to watch it and consume your content.
Yeah, I love that. I already have some new ideas going. I'm like, oh, how can I make a pop-up podcast in somewhere in my community and just like start interviewing people? Like, how fun would that be?
Yeah, just
That
do it in
would
the
be getting
park,
exposed.
stuff like
Yeah,
that, right?
it's
Yeah.
super different. And maybe I wear a purple cow outfit. I don't know. But I, but I love that idea. Like really, because honestly, Nick, and for you listening, social media, you got to use it. Like you have to use it. It's there. Gary Vee even says we have so much time left with these platforms before, things are going to switch from being online onto a laptop or computer or even a phone to more like glasses. So you want to take advantage of these platforms now because they're free, right? So if you're not on them and you're trying to build a brand or a business, and even if you're in corporate, now in the corporate space, it's really important that you're building a personal brand on top of it, especially if you want to grow or pivot in some way down the road. So it's really important that you're doing these things. And how do you stand out in a red ocean? Because social media is kind of at this point a red ocean, especially if you're coming into it now. It's kind of been, or in the last couple of years, it's been like, okay, well, we're competing over the same people, right? When everybody's selling everybody. Whereas podcasting is kind of still that blue ocean. It hasn't fully created that red ocean yet. It's getting there, but it's still in more of an open platform. But even, no matter where you are, how do you make it your own blue ocean? And
Yeah.
that's really how can you get creative and stand out? And I love that. I love your suggestions on that. That's so fun. And make it fun according to you, but make it authentic to your
Yeah.
personality and to
And your
your
brand too.
values and
Yeah.
your brand. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Make it authentic and keep it, and then, go for it and have some fun, whatever that looks like for you. If Nick, if I could hand you a magic wand and you could wave it over the business and go poof and take away one issue, what would that one challenge, one issue that's happening, what would that be and why?
This is gonna be such a funny answer that I hope your listeners can relate to. We are in downtown San Antonio. If I could wave a magic wand, I would give us free parking for so many reasons. Which I will quantify this answer because I know this is sounds ridiculous, but we are just a newer city. Like we are not the New Yorks, the LAs, the Austins, where people are kind of okay with going downtown for a whole bunch of stuff. We are trying to create like half of Geekdom's mission is we want to make like this downtown community for tech, and there is I want to say it's like 5 million square feet of like empty office space in downtown San Antonio right now. Like we're not a downtown centric city, and we are trying our best to change that, and we're doing well for the record. Statistically, over the past 13, 14 years of us existing, we have changed a lot and allowed companies to come down there. But I do think that would help us a ton. I think if I had a more realistic kind of like what we're talking about answer, the other thing I would change is the perception around what it means to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of kind of thoughts about like, oh, well, that's not me, or oh, I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I don't have enough money, or I don't have XYZ. There's this crazy mindset around what entrepreneurs like should look like. And oh man, if I could burn that down, I would. And this is I'm gonna put my board member hat on for Venture Lab, which is entrepreneurship for K to 12 kiddos. A really cool Kaufman study found the biggest indicator of what makes you more likely to be an entrepreneur when you grow up is if you knew it was an option when you were a kid, right? It's not your race, your ethnicity, your gender, how much money you have access to. It's, oh man, did you know you could do this as a job when you were like 15? And those kids are like 100x more likely to want to go figure out how to be an entrepreneur because they can solve these problems that they've like, oh my God, like I could solve this. I'm inspired to go solve that thing. And if I could just make the world realize, like if there is something you are so passionate about, you can find a way to make that your thing. And there are so many tools out there to help you. But it is a very scary journey. So all we can do, right? This goes back to if you look at all of our marketing, all of our strategy, it's like it's community building, it's storytelling, it's highlighting other people of all, different shapes and sizes to say, hey, you can do this. I'm telling you, listeners, you could be an entrepreneur. It is just a scary first leap. But man, if I could change that mindset, I'd be waving that magic wand.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that option. And hopefully we're going to go poof and make that happen. So Nick, if we could revisit this conversation in a year from now, we could bring you back and revisit where we were, where we talked about now versus in 12 months from now. What would success look like for you guys?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say twofold. From a community success standpoint, the coolest thing is someone listened to this and signed up for a program and got investment funding by the time we could talk again. Because it's possible. We have a whole bunch of stuff that gets you geared up to get funding in October, November, December. That's all free if you're a Geekdom member. Some of it's just free regardless. And that to me would be the coolest win because we met a new community friend from you reaching out and then we got somebody plugged in and they actually started their thing. I think we changed San Antonio one entrepreneur at a time, so that would be the biggest metric of success. I think from like a pure business standpoint, what we're trying to do is launch more initiatives within the city to provide additional resources for entrepreneurs that have different skill sets. We're starting to do this now with one of our partner organizations, Launch SA, which is more like traditional brick and mortar businesses. Um, but in my perfect world, our KPI is number of entrepreneurs impacted in San Antonio. So it's just getting more people in the door and doing programming to like say, hey, you can be the next unicorn in San Antonio. So come figure out how to do that.
Hmm. So you work with people in San Antonio. Do you work nationwide? So can people that are listening right now join?
So we are getting there. So I will
Getting there.
I will
Okay.
tease this out. This is it is in beta. So we have kind of two ways you can play. We have a kind of an online community through Discord that you can join from anywhere. We are in the process of expanding our mentor network where anyone can join from anywhere. It should be all live by the end of Q2. But that is a big question we got all the time. So we are working on that. But it's coming soon. You will be able to in the next 90 days or so.
Okay. Well, that's going to be right around the time when this airs. So that's perfect timing.
Oh,
So
perfect. Well, then
yeah,
when this airs, it should be live. Yeah.
it's going to be right
I'll
around
send
the
the
time.
links then.
Yeah, so we'll have that information for you. But definitely, in regardless, if you're wanting to know more about Geekdom and the opportunities, and you're looking for funding or want to learn more about becoming a member, Nick, how can people connect with you and reach out?
Yeah, I'm super easy. If on LinkedIn, it's just me, Nick Honegger, or Nick H at geekdom.com, or probably every other social network on the planet. I'm just at Nick Honegger because I've been around for a while. So I have all the name usernames across the board. But if you ping me across anything, I'm always happy to help. I think one of the my kind of I'm a big believer. I'll end on a kind of a hippie note because I'm a big meditation guy and like help other people kind of person. Um, if you ping me, I would love to help you. I think the coolest thing you can do in the entrepreneurship space is be the first ripple that spirals like all sorts of changes in like the water of entrepreneurship. So I mean it super sincerely. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I would love to get you pointed in the right direction.
And please do reach out to him. Take him up on that offer because we've just been chatting for a little bit here, and he's such a nice guy. And he's very open, and you can tell he wants to help. And if he can help you, he will. And if he doesn't feel like he's the right person, I know deep down he'll point you in the right direction. So it's great to have your network. Your network is your net worth. So make sure that you're including and connecting with Nick. And I know it can be scary to ask questions and reach out, especially if you're getting started and it could be feel vulnerable, but Nick is a safe space to a person to reach out to and ask those questions. So Nick, is there anything that I didn't ask you or I didn't touch on that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I think that's everything. I think if I could share one more thing, it's just if you are ever on the fence of, hey, should I try this thing? Should I get into entrepreneurship? Please try it. I think one of my favorite failures, like I'll jump into the vulnerability bucket. I lost my first startup to a massive lawsuit, and it died. It was like super sad, but I learned more from that experience than anything I had on my startup journey. And all it did was get me so excited to be in this community for the rest of my life. So I think even in worlds where it doesn't work out, you have a ton of extra tries. It is so worth the learning experience, and it's just a very fun and welcoming community to be in. So even if your first one is not what you thought it could be, there's still so much time and so many opportunities to really just make the most out of entrepreneurship.
I love that. I love ending on that because it's really important because a lot of entrepreneurs don't start because they're afraid to fail. What am I going to look like if I fail? What are my family going to think about me? What are my friends going to think about me? And at the end of the day, action brings clarity. And if you want to create something different, you've got to do something different, right? We all hear that mantra all the time. And then if you, it's not failing, like you said, you're where you are now because of that experience. And again, you wouldn't know the things you know if you didn't have that experience. And I don't like the word failure. It's failing forward. People think, oh, if I'm
Yeah.
failing, I'm going backwards. If you allow it, you're actually moving forward. It's teaching you, okay, that didn't work. Now I get to try this. And it's getting you one step closer to what's working and where you're actually supposed to be. And that next step's going to get you the next step, and that step's next. And again, who is it from? Why can't I think of his name off the top of my head? The Apple CEO,
Uh,
um,
Steve Jobs or Tim
Steve
Cook? The one
Jobs.
that's
Steve
alive or
Jobs.
the former?
Steve Jobs, yes, he would. He has a talk that he does that we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots
Yep.
looking backwards. So we must trust that the dots will connect at some time, at some point. So you may not feel like you know where you're going yet, but I promise you, in the future, you're going to look back and go, ah, okay, they're all connected. So thank you, Nick, so much for your time today. I'm so grateful. This has been amazing. Such a great conversation. I'm excited for this interview to air and support our listeners. For you listening, please, if you're watching Nick and I on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button because that is the way that we can get out to more people and share Nick and all of his, all of his wisdom and his experience in this great community that he has for startups and entrepreneurs. So please share the word. If you have friends, family members, people you know in your network who are thinking about being an entrepreneur or in it, and they need Nick in these services and they need funding or they need community, please share this episode with them. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all the places, and you can hit those 5 stars and leave a review, please do. Because again, that helps us share Nick with more people as well. So thank you for listening to the Business Growth Spotlight podcast with Nick and I. If you are looking to get more visibility on your business and you feel like you're trying all the things and you feel like you're drowning in a red ocean and you don't know what to do next to get more people to see you and your product or service, then go grab our free Spotlight to Scale blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint. It's free. It's yours. Go grab it today. And don't forget to reach out to Nick on LinkedIn and geekdom.com. And also just reach out, connect with him. Super nice guy. Thank you, Nick, for your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today again on the Business Growth Spotlight. We will see you on the next episode.
Take care, everybody.